EdTech Tuesdays is now Growing Pains.
Okidok, Pasquale.
Welcome to Growing Pains, the podcast about what sits beneath strategy, organizational culture, and leadership behavior. We bring together innovators, investors, thinkers, and doers who are changing the status quo. This podcast is produced by Snabfooting, the boutique strategy and organizational culture consulting firm. Visit us at snabfooting.com.
I don't usually reschedule meetings, but we had a time earlier this week, and I thought, I'm not mentally prepared to do this meeting. I had, my head was full of other things, other priorities, and my focus, I need to have my focus somewhere else. So the last few years, I don't remember when I rescheduled a meeting, because when I do a meeting, it's a commitment for me. But here we are. And today, Pasquale, it's lovely to have you on our show. Nice to meet you.
So it's nice to meet you too, Eva, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. And I'm so curious on your work. When I found you on LinkedIn like 1 year ago, I fish for the best guests to the show. And what drew my attention? It was like a boardroom with a table with a human on the board table, but a statue of a naked human on the board, and that draws so much attention. Surprise!
Absolutely. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate that picture captured your attention. It captured my attention because I actually saw that in real life. So the picture was taken in, it's actually a place that you can visit. It's like a stately home located in the south of England, and it's called RH, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you've heard of it. And it's in a small village called Ainhow. And Ainhow is just located just near Oxford, not that far from Oxford. And what it is basically a place you can go and visit all these different rooms that have this decor that is really unique. So each one has a different decor inside each room, whether it's the way the furniture is arranged, the way the pictures are put on the wall, the way the bookshelves are all, everything is particular to that room. So there are no two rooms that are similar. And it's a beautiful place because it's set in this wonderful 30-acre ground with deer and all kinds of animals there, and it's wonderful. Anyway, one of the rooms had this table, which was a beautiful long table, and on that table there was a sculpture of somebody lying down on that table. And it reminded me a little bit about a boardroom, right?
Yeah,
a boardroom
because
table. Not that people lie down on a boardroom table, but the fact is that you have to bring yourself and everything. So in a way, you have to make yourself naked. Not literally, but, in terms of business and in terms of interaction and in terms of just basically being yourself, right, in the boardroom. And so that's why I took that picture, because to me it symbolizes really the interactions that people have in the boardroom and how really you need to be genuine and authentic in those interactions. And that sometimes is missing, right? When you have people in a boardroom that have had many years of experience, they've led organizations, they've been in that particular business, they've had that expertise, they know what needs to be done. And yet their role is not to drive the company, right? That's the CEO and the operational team. So I felt that was a really nice metaphor to use.
I really like
that's
that
why I took
metaphor.
that picture. Yeah, so that's really the story of the picture. So yeah, there is a whole story that goes behind that image, and it's not just an image as you know is there that's taken from somewhere. I've seen it. I've been there in real life and experienced it.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing this. I hope our listeners today are inspired of this story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Pascal, if you do a little experiment, consider that you and me, we will collect answers from like 10 CEOs each. Both you and me work with CEOs, boards, and leadership teams. And if we asked one question, what they regret most in their life is today, is their last day in life. In average, if we do this study, collect 20 answers as a sum in total, what do you think they say? What do they regret most? Do you have any ideas?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And I don't know if you've come across, but there's a book by an author called Bronnie Gwynn. And the book's called The 5 Regrets of the Dying, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you've heard of it. But anyway,
I have heard about it, but not read it.
Bronnie Gwynn is, I think she's still alive today, but the author is a nurse that spent a lot of time in palliative care. So taking care of people that were in the last stages of their lives, right? And during that experience, she was interested in the regrets that people had when they were nearing the end of their lives, right? So, I mean, this is something that, happens to all of us, right? This is a destination we all face one day or other. And so she was interested in finding out if there were common themes that came up from the people that were in palliative care and were nearing the end of their lives. And she found 5 common themes. And do you know what number 1 was in all the common themes? What do you think number 1 was?
Maybe it could be something about like conflicts, and why didn't I speak earlier or say this message to my son or mother or someone important that you have a conflict with, something like that. That's my first guess.
That's right. So the first regret that she found people had was that all of them wished that they'd been true to themselves, right? And by being true to themselves, that means, really saying what they felt and how they felt about something, right? So that really is all about being at peace with yourself, if you see what I mean. It really is all about, wanting to, be true to yourself at the end of the day.
And maybe that goes back to the boardroom with the human at the table, the naked human at the table, speaks the truth, understand yourself better, and be authentic. So a circle of that.
That's right. And I'm glad you made that connection, because many years ago, when I first started working with boardrooms, somebody once said to me, he said, "Oh, Pasquale, integrity, right? Integrity, the word integrity.
Yes.
And integrity can mean different things to different people, right? But integrity in a boardroom is very important, right? In all walks of life is important, but in a boardroom is very important." And they said to me, Pasquale, integrity is like oxygen, right? The higher you go in an organization, the less of it there is. Which means that when people get to a board level position, sometimes they're just not aware of where the boundaries of integrity are. They're not aware of what does it mean, really, integrity.
But that level of integrity, if we repeat it again, so you have me on the same level here, is it higher or lower in the executive teams?
It's lower than people think, Eva.
Yeah, that was my own conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why is because in a lot of boardrooms, you've got big personalities. Big
the
egos. And for a reason, right? These people have been selected from thousands of people because of their knowledge, because of their experience, because of their results, because of a lot of reasons, right? So they've been put into a position that they feel on a pedestal, right?
Yeah. But we will have a lot of problems if that is too high. If the ego is too high, if they are on the pedestal and have too much confidence, overconfidence. That is not so nice to meet these executives that, I go to the narcissistic, too much of the narcissistic trait.
That's right.
That I relate to when I hear this.
That's right. And a lot of boardrooms today still, and I don't think it's like that in Scandinavian countries, but in a lot of other countries, there's still a big imbalance in the boardrooms between representations, male, female, different cultural backgrounds, and so on, right? It still is dominated by white males in their 60s or 70s.
We try to do our best here. Many large organizations, they really say, it's so important with inclusion and diversity. But when I scratch on the surface, if I look at websites or are in contact with these organizations, I quickly see, it is imbalance. So they not always deliver what they say do. It is a gap what they say and do there.
Exactly.
We also have the jantelagen. Do you heard about jantelagen, Pascal? And that also means jantelagen make the Swedish or Scandinavian people. You are not so good that you think you are. If maybe you can translate it better and say it better in English, but you can't go and speak for an audience and say, I'm the best, because then other people say, hello, what are you doing? You are not the best. So it's very important here in our culture, in the Scandinavia, to be more lagom, not too much, not too little, but in the middle.
That's right. It's really interesting what you say, because I've had a lot of experience of working with Scandinavian countries.
Tell your the global audience today. We have lots of listeners from the global audience.
Yeah, fantastic. And one of the organizations I worked with a lot was Nokia.
Yeah.
In Finland, right?
Yes.
And Nokia, they're based in a town called Espoo, just outside of Helsinki. And it's a nice town, Espoo. It's a nice small town. And their headquarters, they built it like a tall building, a tall glass building. And they have one elevator, of course, in this building. And this building goes to the top floor.
Yeah.
And they have the boardroom there, right? They have the boardroom. And I remember when I first went to visit the boardroom, I was really surprised. Why? Because when I first walked in there, in the boardroom, it was actually an open space, and they had a fire in the middle, like a fire pit. And they had chairs in a circle around.
Yeah.
And I asked them, I said, "Oh, what's this? What is this?" I thought it was where they go and have some tea together, or they just, the coffee break or something like that. So, no, this is our boardroom. This is where we meet as a board together. We sit around the fire. And when we have important decisions to make, we talk about this. We share any concerns that we have. We share any points that we raise. And then together, we decide what we're going to do. And I thought that was really interesting because they'd done away with the board table, right? It's no more a board table. They had this open space around a fire.
That's great. I love that idea. I don't like tables in the middle because it's like a blocker, a barrier between people.
That's right. And that was a really interesting experience that I saw. And really, when you think about boards and you think about what are 3 essential characteristics that board members need to have, and again, this is from my experience.
I'm interested too.
There are 3 characteristics, and I summarize them as iOS, like the Apple operating system, right? iOS.
Yep.
The first one, I, is insight, right?
Yep.
They need to bring insight into a business, into an operation, into a function. They need to bring insight, right? Insight, depth, right?
Yes.
The O stands for oversight. And oversight means seeing how all the different pieces of a business work together, how production, how finance, how IT, how HR, how they all come together to serve the customers that the company serves. So insight, oversight. And the S stands for scrutiny, because they have to take care of shareholder interests at the end of the day. They're there because the shareholders have invested money. They've invested capital funds in the company, and they want to get a return on that. So scrutiny is to make sure that the company is ethically doing the business they need to do. And this is, we come back to integrity, right? Earlier on. And so, so that's, for me, those are the 3 characteristics, iOS. And when you think about it, it's easy to remember when you think about it as the Apple operating system, right?
Yeah. When did you create this model?
That was quite a while ago, actually. Again,
yeah, you have like 35 years or somewhere there with experience from boardrooms and executive. Fantastic.
That's right. And so, so I've been using that as a way of helping me whenever I first start working with boards at a very high level. I look for those 3 characteristics, right? Insight, oversight, and scrutiny.
Yeah.
Those three characteristics. And I look at each board member and I think to myself, well, where are you on each of those three dimensions?
Mm.
And that's something then that gives me an appreciation
Mm.
of how the board works together.
Absolutely. I am curious, Pascal, on one question, because you have so long experience meeting these people, this group of people, and I would assume they face a lot of quite difficult, tough decisions daily, or it's uncertainties in the world, and if we go a little deeper on, they don't always have clear answers. How do they handle that? Can you tell more about that? What's your experience from this?
Yeah, that's a great question there, Eva. And yeah, if I just step back a little bit and just set the context for this, because it's important.
It is a context switch.
Yeah, it's important
Yeah.
because it's the context that's driving what's going on, obviously, right now.
Mm.
Have you heard of this phrase, the VUCA world? You've heard of this phrase, the VUCA world, VUCA.
Yes.
And it's an acronym that represents how the business climate is today, right? And VUCA stands for, the V stands for volatile.
Mm.
And volatile means the speed of change is accelerating quicker and quicker and quicker every day. You only need to see this with AI, right? And the change and everything that that's doing right now. And before AI, it was the internet and so on, right? So each technology brings with it accelerated change. Okay, so V is for volatile. U is really all about the complexity that we have today in this. The V is volatility. The U is all about uncertainty, right? And uncertainty is really, you don't have any predictability anymore. So it makes it difficult to forecast the future, right? So who could have known 6 months ago that the oil price would nearly double in the space of a week? Who could have predicted that? Well, I'm sure somebody must have done. He probably made a lot of money out of that, right? Also, when Trump introduced his tariffs, right? First, he said the tariffs are going to be like this, and then he changed his mind. He said, no, they're going to be like that. So how do you plan for that? That's the lack of predictability. The C in VUCA stands for complexity, right? Everything is interconnected, right? So there are many variables and each is connected to the other, right? So when you think about that, you know, even the global tariff change and the food that we buy at the supermarket, it has an effect on that, right? It makes decisions a lot harder to make. And boards in organizations and steering these organizations, that makes it very tricky indeed. And the last one, probably for me, is the most important one, is ambiguity. The A stands for ambiguity. And ambiguity is really when things are unclear, right? And you can have multiple interpretations of it. It's hard to know what's right in a situation. So, for example, the oil price is going up. That's good for the oil producing companies, but that's not very good for the consumer.
No.
At the end of the day. What's going to happen to that in the future? It's hard to know what's right in terms of that situation. So VUCA is a term which is used a lot today to describe the environment that we find ourselves in, and something that boards have to be able to navigate around, although it's very tricky. And for me, really, it's the ambiguity. It's being able to sit with the ambiguity. It's being able to make decisions even though you don't have 100% of the data, right? Yeah, it's really the old 80-20 rule. You know, the Pareto principle, you're familiar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 20% of the information gives you 80% of the results, basically. However, it's finding that 20% of the information.
How does it feel to sit with this uncertainty, to not know the answers?
Yeah, how do you think it feels? There's an emotional side to that. Why?
Yeah.
Because our brains are wired for certainty, right?
Yeah.
And we're not comfortable when we don't know everything, right? We're not comfortable. And so we can't sit with ambiguity for very long because our brain is searching all the time for certainty, right? This is what our brain is looking for. We're pre-cable, pre-wired to do that.
I think it's possible to learn to sit with that uncertainty, at least to some degree. What's your take on that?
That's right. That's right. One of the teams that I was working with, the leadership teams that I was working with and coaching, we put in place what I call an ambiguity resilient team culture, right? And what that meant was that during the team meetings, when they started, they would spend 5 minutes asking each other, what's the one thing you're currently unclear or unsure about? It wasn't a problem report, right? They just have to be honest with each other. And it was a way of normalizing uncertainty as another discussion topic, right? And this was something that they really benefited from. We also created something that we called learning from the fog, which was a ritual,
the fog.
right?
We have fog here in Sweden as well.
Yeah, and we get that here in the UK too much, right? Yeah, yeah. So it's really dedicating about 30 minutes as a team to review one decision that they made that was under significant ambiguity. Not to blame people, it wasn't that.
No.
But it was really a learning conversation. It's like they were asking themselves, like, what did we know? What did we assume? What happened? What would we do differently now that we know that? And so when you put all those elements together, you begin to build, as I say, what you call ambiguity resilient team cultures. That's something that is really very, very helpful.
I think it's beautiful. But what does a team need to do this sort of team discussions? It's difficult for every team to do this. It's uncomfortable to ask these questions. What sort of traits do they need?
So basically, it's something that it's like anything you do in life, right? You have to try it, right? You don't know you're going to like a food until you try it, right? And then you decide, well, I like it or I don't like it. I like it because it's such and such, or I don't like it because it's such and such. So that's what we do. We experiment. We promote this experimentation, this what I call safe experimentation. And it's like a laboratory, right? You do these little experiments, you learn from them, you gain the confidence, and then you can, in the future meetings, you take that confidence with you. And that helps you in then going deeper and being more confident with ambiguity, right? Because again, as I say, it's something that we're pre-wired. Your brain is pre-wired for certainty. This is what it looks for.
One aspect, when I think, it's, I really like this example, but I think we need to slow down when we do discussions and exercises like this. In a high pace work environment, full meeting agendas, it's quite difficult to do that context switch and sit together with people and discuss these questions. Do we have time, or time, it's priorities, but do we create the space for this? Or do we need to do that more?
So one of my mantras is slow down to speed up. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But let me explain.
Yeah,
I think I
do
mentioned
that,
this to you
Pascal.
before, right? So the U.S. Navy SEALs, you know, the SEALs, the people that are trained in different tactics, commando tactics, and so on.
Yes.
When they learn how to swim, one of the first things they're taught is that if they want to swim fast, they have to slow down to go smooth to go fast.
True. That, I think that is my life motto.
Yeah, because we can go fast. I mean, okay, you can go fast, that's fine. However, by doing so, we might miss something important.
Mm.
Whereas when you slow down, it's like, you know, when you're in a high-speed train and you're going fast, everything is blurred.
Yes.
You know, all the countryside that goes by you is blurred. You can't see any detail. But the minute you slow down, that detail becomes clearer and clearer and clearer.
Thank you, Pascal. And that was why I decided to slow down in the middle of this week, reschedule our podcasting, prepare to be in the right state, and have this fantastic discussion with you. But I see the clock is soon time to round up this discussion for today. But maybe one or two last questions. What has surprised you the most in your work life?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. That's a great question. One thing that continues to surprise me is how important insight is. And insight is when you see the world one way, you have an insight, and after that, everything changes. The world is completely different. So the metaphor I use for that is like when you open the door a little bit and you see a new world outside. That's the insight. And that's what changes for you, right? Because most of the time we're in our day-to-day activity, you know, being busy and having a busy life. Once we have an insight, everything can dramatically change. Getting that insight is something that when you work with an executive coach, that's really something that brings it to the surface a lot quicker. And I work with a coach myself. I have my own coach, and obviously I coach others. So to me, it's all about insight and bringing these insights to the surface. And that's so powerful when you do that, because from there on, everything is different. Everything changes.
Thank you. And now when we speak about insights, is it something, what do you wish the executives understood about uncertainty and decision making earlier?
That they are creators of their own world. They make their own world.
That is wonderful. I agree. That's beautiful, Pascal. Thank you. Is it a guest that you would like to invite to the show?
Is there a guest that I'd like to invite? That's a big question. There are lots of guests that I would
I
like
didn't
to
prepare you.
You can ask Stephen Bartlett if he'd like to attend.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would be great. Who else? There's somebody else that you might be interested in talking to. And that's a guy that I've been interacting with, a guy called Rich Litvin. Maybe you've heard of him, the coaching guy.
Thanks. A lot of great tips. What is the most important takeaway from this discussion today?
That I've had a great time. I really enjoyed chatting with you, Eva. Thank you so much for inviting me. And my greatest takeaway was the quality of the questions that you asked. And
Thank you.
it helped me to think through a lot of different aspects and come up with examples, which hopefully will be of benefit to your audience.
Thank you so much. And yeah, a lovely conversation today. Thanks. How can the listeners reach you?
They can reach me if they want to connect on LinkedIn. I also have a website called talentworksgroup.com, talentworksgroup in one word.com. And they can find out a little bit more about me there.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Eva, for having me, and have a wonderful rest of day and weekend.
You've been listening to Growing Pains with Eva Houtmacher. Snabbfoting is a boutique strategy and organizational culture consulting firm based in Stockholm. We support organizations globally and help CEOs and leadership teams who want to build resilient, high-performing organizations. Visit us at snabbfoting.com.